I love you anyway. Yes, I love you anyway. Even on the rainy days when you won't meet my gaze, there's nothing left to say. It's when I know it's true that I was meant to be with you. So you can do what you make, but I will always stay, 'cause I love you anyway. Nobody likes to think that someone sees the ugly in them, but people wind up all alone if they don't let somebody in them. And it's a bit naive to think that love and living together we won't see all the shameful things inside us. But if we love, then we'll be free to be you and me. And we'll agree that unconditionally I'll love you anyway. Yes, I love you anyway. Even on the rainy days when you won't meet my gaze and there's nothing left to say. It's when I know it's true that I was meant to be with you. So you can do what you may, but I will always stay, 'cause I love you anyway. Yes, I love you anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jarret. I love that song. And I know that song because I have your CD in my car. So put it in your car. It's great driving music. And the air feels good. Thanks for turning that on. And I have to say, Jody, when you got up and I saw those pants you're wearing, I love those. So after the service, everybody has to get a glimpse of what Jody's wearing. That's great. So there were 3 friends driving together out for a Sunday drive, and unfortunately they had a car accident and they all die and they go to heaven. They get to heaven, they have orientation. So at orientation, they're told, you know, that when you have the funeral, or when the funeral is being held for you, people are going to pass by the casket and they're going to be saying things. So you have to decide, what do you think you want to hear when people go by? First guy says, I want to hear that I was the greatest doctor ever and a great man. Second guy goes, I want to hear that I was the best teacher ever, I was a wonderful husband, and I really provided for our children of tomorrow. And the third guy says, let me think about this. I want people to pass by my casket and go, oh, look, he's moving. Big breath. As Linda mentioned, our theme for this month is accountability for the Centers for Spiritual Living. That's a big word, can be, goes in a lot of different directions. It can mean a lot. Our title today is The Open Book Life. So I'm going to take that in a couple different directions because that can also mean a lot. And to have an open book life and to be comfortable about that sometimes requires that we have a very clear, balanced life and that we're personally responsible and accountable. So we're going to look at that in a couple different ways. Webster defines accountability as subject to having to report, explain, or justify, being answerable, responsible, and account for one's actions. So I'll take this in different directions because I want to lead as a kind of around the circle back to personal. We're going to look at that spiritual bypass, personal accountability, and then how do we create a culture of accountability through our Science of Mind philosophy and our Centers for Spiritual Living. So it'll kind of be like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So what we know, what we teach, is that everything always begins right here. right inside of us first and always. That's where we find our personal accountability. Then we begin to build a life around us of accountability. But as human beings, we do have our little ins and outs. We find ways to kind of sometimes skirt the issues or kind of not look around what's going on. And we have our little games that are really unconscious so that we don't have to look at some of our issues. Do you know what I mean? Anybody else do that besides me? Okay. So I loved Linda's reading. It falls right in line with what I want to talk about. So spiritual bypass is the first thing. How many people have heard the term? It's kind of a New Thought buzzword, but it's not really talked about very much. And I have to admit that it took me a long time to understand the term and to understand and actually see where I was using it in my life. And so it almost sounds like kind of an oxymoron because we talk about being spiritual and using some of these spiritual processes in our beliefs, yet it can go two ways. We can use it for our highest good. We can use it as a shield to look at things. And so it's important to kind of see the difference. I had a very synchronistic moment while I was putting this talk together over the last week, and I had a book fall into my lap. Isn't that fun when that happens sometimes? And the book is called Spiritual Bypassing, When Spirituality Disconnects Us from What Really Matters. So spirituality is supposed to be good for us, right? I had to kind of wrap my brain around this a little bit. As chaplains, Linda Brew is a chaplain, and I went through the same program she did. We're taught to clear our lives and clear our stuff inside first to be able to receive someone's story and to do our own spiritual work. Even practitioners in their first year of life are taught to figure out how their life got that way and how do you clear it. I'll admit that when I went into Prac 1, when they told me I was going to have to look at my life, I thought, there ain't no way I'm going to be able to do this alone. And I ran right to a counselor and did that all through Prac training. And there's a lot to look at and really have someone else kind of help bring that up. When practitioners are doing a treatment with someone, even in our process of visioning, it's important to clear our mind first to have space for the new to come in. So how can we be accountable to ourselves and be authentic if we have not cleared those deep hurts and issues that are hiding, and they actually propel us to do things that we may not want to do? Spiritual practices tools, again, as I said, can be used to heal us, or they can be used to provide a shield to keep us from really feeling or touching our pain and our issues. So again, the definition of that is spiritual practices and beliefs that have us avoid dealing with our feelings, our pain, our unresolved wounds, and even some developmental needs. It's much more common than you think in our philosophy. We call it spiritual bypass in New Thought or in some of the spiritual work, but actually the process itself is used all over in different areas of life. So it's not immune for everybody. So we may hear things like, oh, hang on just a second. Yeah, we use these things to kind of keep us from our pain. When we start into our spiritual work, when we find that thing that kind of helps us to feel good and puts us on a path of growth, sometimes we feel that when our pain goes away and we're not touching it anymore, that we've really made a huge step in our lives, and we feel that we're growing and we're even transcending. And what happens sometimes, if we haven't done that work, we're not transcending, we're hovering. There's a difference. And then we get stuck in that space. So some of the things that we may choose, Linda gave some of the examples, some of them are, we'll use these things, little phrases like, oh, it's okay, it's all God, when there's something that's really bad that's happened, or God's got this, I just let go. I should be nicer. Oh, it's not spiritual to be angry. It's all good no matter what happens. We may find ourselves in meditation classes and just staying there in that space all the time. We may find ourselves taking some of these classes over and over and over again. I had a friend at another center that took Prosperity Plus and Prosperity Plus 2 about 10 times. because they felt like while they were in that class, it's a great class, take it, but they couldn't get past a certain level with it. So these are terms that we use, and they're not bad, but we use them in this work, don't we? Right, it's all God, it's all good. So we'll keep going because there's a few other pathways with this. Blaming is another angle of spiritual bypass. We're deflecting, we're moving away from it, the issue. And Tony Robbins says there's 3 areas of blame, 3 directions. One can be an event or outside circumstances. When we blame the events around us and life around us, what it does is it starts to solidify the idea that the outside world is in control of us. And we're letting that happen. It's not what we teach. There's been people who have had some amazing events that were pretty dire, and yet they worked their way right out of that. So the outside world is not in control of us. We can deflect to someone else, blame someone else for things. Yep, it's the other guy. I'm spiritual, it's not me. And sometimes it's a quick kind of save your butt thing, or we don't want to disappoint somebody, so we blame somebody else for something that happened. But here's the biggest one. Sometimes we just blame ourselves. We take blame that doesn't belong to us, or we blame ourselves for everything. And when that happens, we end up beating ourselves up. We also end up enabling someone else from doing their work when we should not have had the issue on our shoulders. We can do that, and it becomes a pattern. We keep ourselves in discontent, and then guess what? Our energy is used up in a different direction, and we're not looking at our own stuff. We're not being self-responsible, and then we can't be accountable. So when we stop blaming outside circumstances, we stop blaming other people, even stop over-blaming ourselves and taking things that aren't ours, then we have the space and the energy to be accountable for us and what's ours. I don't guess anybody else here does that stuff, right? Just me? Yeah, right. Okay, so make sure. I love the New Thought movement. I love being a part of it. It's been a part of my life for many years. And I love the science of mind philosophy. Nothing has changed my life like this work has. And so I got into it in the first place because when I found it, it provided an avenue for me to go deeper into my life. It provided tools for me to help me recognize that my life was more open than I thought, and there were more avenues to working on myself. I knew it was there, I just didn't know how to get to it. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. So when I found Science of Mind, this philosophy, it helped me. But it wasn't my ladder out of my pain and my issues. It actually turned out to be my ladder into my work. It was my ladder to go deeper into the work, to start looking at what I needed to see and what was mine. You have to go through it. It helped me find my pain, and it helped me find my soul. Both of my parents were taught to brush things under the rug as they went along and never look down. Do you know people like that? Don't look down. It's taken me a very long time to unwind those basic core beliefs of my family. And I'm still working on it. That's a lifetime process for a lot of us. So it's taken me a long time. And I have learned that, yes, God's got this. Absolutely. But I've also learned that some of this is my responsibility. And I've also learned that some of this is the other person's responsibility. It's not all mine. And so where's that line? And I'm going to do what's mine. So let me give you an example of what spiritual bypass can look like. I first learned about it the hard way, of course, how we do learn about things in life. I had a family member that had 2 very painful events in their life. I was new to Science of Mind. I was skimming the top. You know how we do that when something's new in life and we think we got it? We just start skimming. So this person had a very painful event, and so I get on the phone with them, and I'm saying, you got to be stronger about this, and don't let anybody hurt you. Nobody can hurt you if you don't let them. And the phone went silent. And I realized, it took me a long time to realize that what I had done was that I was the one who was afraid of the pain that this person was going through, And I thought I was doing that person a favor by helping them disassociate from the pain themselves. And that could have been the worst thing. And then I did it again. Still skimming the top. I'd gone a little deeper. I found myself trying to be the peacemaker in a situation, trying to be spiritual with the perpetrator, trying to make everything smooth over and be nice, and take even the accountability away from the person who needed it. And that wasn't the right thing to do. And again, it's like, when am I going to learn? Some of this stuff just takes a while. So, can we have an open book life that's comfortable when there are things underneath that we're not dealing with? Because those things are going to drive us in different directions. It's like two north ends of a magnet, if we're not going to look at it, right? But can we be accountable to other people when we're not dealing with our own issues? Yes, we can. Because as we do that, we can let someone else's demands and life and orders and needs take up our space so that we don't have to do our own work. Right? It goes both ways. And we can get caught up in somebody else's stuff. So that was a big aha, too, for me to learn. And keep myself busy on the outside so I don't have to look at the inside. So, okay. Wake up just a moment, take a breath. Okay? It's very possible to be spiritual, responsible, and have integrity, and be accountable. As long as we do our work, we have to deal with it and learn our lessons and to clear the stuff. So, yeah, take a breath. We're going to shift gears. Roll your shoulders for a minute. Let's go to phase 2. So now we're stepping into our life. We're stepping into our presence. We're not deflecting or turning away from who we are, but we're going to look at what else is going on. Let's say hello to ourselves at this place and realize that what's going on down there isn't quite so bad. We just have to deal with it. Okay. So now we're going to look at accountability from a different perspective in relationship. And how about our parents? It's our very first relationship. It's our very first experience of God. It's all that we know. As children, we look to our parents for everything. We have to have our needs met. We want to be loved. And we also, from a certain perspective, want to be obedient. We want to make our parents happy and proud. So we develop this relationship of dependency, but it's accountability also on both sides. We're accountable to them, they're accountable to us. As parents, from the other perspective, we want to have the best for our children. We want to give them the best. We actually want them to be happy, to be safe, to have security, and we think that we know best because we want to shield them from pain. So we think that if we control that path of their lives to keep them, to kind of guide them towards the right job, the right relationship, the right place to live, that everything will be wonderful for them. Right? Isn't that the perfect way we want to be as parents? But what we don't realize and what we forget is that sometimes it's that path of pain that really propels the growth. That's the place that as each individual, no matter how old they are, children, teenage, adults, even into our older years, sometimes it's that place of pain that allows us to work through those challenges and those obstacles to find our own personage inside. It tells us what our strengths are. It allows us to learn how to make decisions and find our answers and to be accountable for ourselves. It's problem solving. But that's how we find our personal power. How many people have seen Wonder Woman yet? I haven't seen it yet, but it is on our list. And what I'm hearing is about how wonderful this story is, the beginning of this girl and what she moves into in her life. And I've seen pictures of women on the internet. It's so funny, wearing a crown and a cape and a sword. And they're like, it's great to see all our gray hairs doing that. But anyway, okay, so allowing children to find their own way and work their way through their obstacles is how they grow. And it's how they find what they like and what they don't like and what they want to be and not be. And it's not good to keep them from them. How else can you know and practice your own personal potential if you're never given the opportunity? And that's a path of finding your own accountability. Friday night, our spiritual movie was Finding Joe. And it's the Joseph Campbell story of the hero's journey. This was an amazing movie. And I borrowed this copy, so I'm going to buy a copy, I think, so we can show it again. I know some people missed it and want to see it. But in this movie, it is really about how continually we have to go through our lives because we have new obstacles that we always have to move through. And that hero's journey, is a big circle of going through your obstacles and the reward you get from it, and then just returning home again as this new person. And it continues through our life. And so Joseph Campbell says that to find the opening to experiencing our joy and our purpose, our bliss and our authenticity, there's no way you can't do that without going through this journey. And that's how we become fully accountable to ourselves and our reason for being. In this movie, there are amazing stories about what people go through, about changing career paths, and you get that call that it's time, that you're not in the right place, it's time to make a change. And this one gentleman talked about how he quit school and quit his relationship and everything and just went home and had to go to bed for a month. Because it was like that chrysalis, his insides had to do all this change. There was a story about an 11-year-old boy who was the sole survivor of a small plane crash and had to go down this snowy mountain by himself. It was an incredible story, but what he grew from that and what he learned about life and the planet and nature and himself in a story like that. There are also stories about young children who knew exactly what they wanted to do at an early age. Wouldn't that be a gift? But they had these parents that helped them through that. But they still had obstacles too, because we all have our dragons inside of us that we need to conquer. And then the dragon becomes parts of us and we grow in that. When we go through that, our life becomes ours. It's not what someone else wanted from us, and it's not giving ourselves away to something else. So when we're able to commit to being accountable to ourselves first, and we listen to that nudge, we open that space to go deep, to do that work, and we find that we're not afraid to tell the story that we've always been afraid to share. And when you can do that from your inside, that's big. We allow ourselves to see what our needs are and what our dreams are. That's where we grow. Joseph Campbell says we must be willing to get rid of the life we've planned so that we can have the life that is waiting for us. And this is how we stand comfortably in the open book life. Let's take another breath. Phase 3. Okay. So how do we develop a culture of accountability? What does accountability mean with us in our centers for spiritual living? Accountability is a check and balance system based on our core values in support of our global vision, which is a world that works for everyone. We do our personal work. We take the classes, and we allow ourselves to go deep into the work, to break that shell of fear that keeps us from moving forward and finding out who we really are. And if we have to add additional counseling work or other work, good, do it. Whatever the support we need is perfect and powerful, and that's where we allow our eyes to open to see what our needs are and listen. We live through our authentic, accountable, responsible presence as we work with others in our center. Accountability allows us to be answerable to another. And this is where we are with Centers for Living. We are focusing on key relationships with our families and friends, with our practitioners and ministers in all areas of our life and within our center. It's communicating in confidence when requested, and openness and courage where needed, and related in all ways through the application of the science of mind philosophy and in our daily living. And in doing this, we grow the space around us to do the same. Dr. Ken Gordon, our spiritual leader, said this in the weekly message this week. When we talk about creating a culture of accountability, we're talking about creating life where people are accountable, and that means responsible to our activities and their actions. When we become self-responsible and accountable to other people, we live up to doing what we say we're going to do, and the end result is that we manifest a creative atmosphere for others to be able to grow, expand, and enjoy life. When we actually begin to stand up and take responsibility for the activities and actions that we do, the things that we create, and we know that it's all created from within, then the end result is that we begin to blend and move in a mosaic that fits the world itself. This is the greatest blessing that we can ever find in the world. He goes on to say, know you are loved, know you are honored, and know that you are valuable. And what you do, what you say, how you act is important to the world around us. Modeling this is probably the most important thing to awakening. Joseph Campbell matches that statement with, the goal of life is to make your heartbeat match the beat of the universe, to match your nature with nature. So I want to end with a few quotes. Brene Brown, love her stuff. Her recent book, Daring Greatly. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is the path. Stephen Baldwin, an actor, I learned in an extreme way that accountability falls with me. And Cesar Chavez, the American labor leader and civil rights activist who co-founded the National Farm Workers Association, he says, when we are really honest with ourselves, we must admit that our lives are all that really belong to us. So it is how we use this life that determines what kind of men we are. So as you go forward this week, as you go from here today, ask yourself this question. Am I being accountable and responsible to myself and what I want for me? And you can also ask, are there places where I'm being accountable that maybe it's not mine to do? And we'll end with one more quote from Joseph Campbell's movie the other night. Follow your bliss, and the universe will open doors for you where there were only walls. So, I hope you can use that this week. So I'd like to invite our practitioners to come forward, and we'll put this right into prayer. So close your eyes with me. And as we go deep within, recognize that it is a place of love. Going within is actually a place of safety. Because that place within is that place of spirit. In this moment, I let go of the outside world and move inside to the place of love that is the substance that I am made of, and each individual here. For I know that there is really only one. One mind, one life, one love, one breath. And I let myself rest in that. And I know that as I am created of this magnificent one, I have within me, and I know every individual here has within them, that space that is powerful. It is not force, it is powerful. It is a love that is endearing and growing and empowering, and leads us to that place of healing, of seeing with the inside eyes, of seeing with the eyes of love that embrace us and guide us to those doorways that we've not seen before, that lead us into healing, into seeing our magnificence, our joy, our possibility, and what we came here to be. I choose for myself and each person here to have that life of bliss, that feeling, that knowing that our life is purposeful and powerful, and that every choice we make for ourselves is guided only from love and from that agreement that we made in spirit for our purpose here. Claiming that this week we see the power in personal accountability, in personal authenticity. We see the door where there's only been a wall before, and it opens right before us because we're finally allowing the space to expand. And how good that is. I claim and know that I am accountable to myself, as each person here is, and that the world is not accountable to us. We are accountable to it, to this life that we have been given, and that we are here to express that presence of the divine. And what a blessed thing it is to model that joy and that good. And in that accountability, in that authenticity, there is a confidence and a presence that glows and vibrates out. And how wonderful that is. I claim that right here for each individual in this space this week as they step into that and further and deeper into their life. It is a blessing for all here. It is a blessing for our center. It is a blessing for our town. And I know blessing for all people, all leaders, all teachers, and the leaders of our country, the leaders of this world, as we expand and grow. For the world is good, and it is moving in that direction. I claim it so. And so I know love, I know good, I know appreciation, I know joy. And I release this into that one, into that law that makes it so by the power of this word and by the heart and acceptance of all here. And so claiming this together, knowing it is so, looking into this joyous week, together we say, and so it is.